May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to preserve the legacy of Shinju Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Charlie Korin, Pokorney. He's a Zen priest who's now with the Brooklyn Zen Center. All right, let's hear what they have on their site. Charlie Korin Pokorney grew up in Hyde Park on the south side of Chicago. He was ordained as a priest by Reb Anderson in 1999 and received Dharma transmission in 2018. He practiced as a resident of Tassajara and Green Gulch Farm. I think that's for about 12 years, and studied koans with Daniel Taragno. Charlie and his wife Sarah served as head priests at Stone Creek Zen Center from 2014 to 2022. He teaches at the Institute of Buddhist Studies in Berkeley, including courses on Buddhist philosophy, history, meditation, and ritual practice. Charlie, Sarah, and their children moved to Brooklyn in 2022. Yes, the Brooklyn Zen Center that was founded by Tia Strozer and someone else. It said so in the Charlie, this fellow who's there as a co-founder, or who helped Tia, or they invited Tia. Anyway, so they're there now. God, they had a nice place in Sebastopol. Now they're in Brooklyn. Oh, well. Charlie, I don't know quite which organization it was. Maybe the SCZA, the Soto Zen Buddhist Association, that he had a lot of involvement with. Or also, he had something to do with connections with the Soto Zen folks in Japan and in America, their outreach in America. But anyway, he clarifies that in this podcast. Oh, and this is in the podcast, too, but I wanted to mention it. Charlie and Timothy O'Connor Fraser, working with the San Francisco Zen Center, they were the first to really put up Shunryu Suzuki lectures on the Zen Center site and do a nice job of it, with the transcript, the audio, and they put up photographs. And they used I gave them a hard disk to get it all. And we had back and forth while they were doing that. But that was great. We linked to all that and celebrated it. They were doing it. Then, they moved on to other stuff. But anyway, that was important. So, listen, let's have our pause to meditate, and then we'll give Charlie a call. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause, and we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and we'll give Charlie Pokorney a call.
Hello.
Charlie, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good. I'm mostly recovered
Oh yeah,
from COVID. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. The late COVID obviously was much better to get than the early one.
oh yeah, yeah. No, and we've had our whole family's had various layers of vaccines, and I think that helped.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And yeah,
definitely. Yeah, yeah. America has a higher death and sickness rate from COVID than other comparable, first world
yeah,
countries because it's such a hotbed of anti-vaxxing,
yeah,
uh,
yeah. It's it's
which
crazy.
which is political there. It's
Yes,
weird.
yes.
Uh, yeah, it didn't very little of that here.
Hmm.
Extremely little. Mainly from I hear about it from Americans, a few Americans, and a few people from
Yeah, yeah.
India. Anyway,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
so
Yeah.
well, great. Good to hear you're almost recovered from it.
Yes.
Now remind me where you are and what you're doing.
Oh yeah, my family's in Brooklyn. Yeah, we've been here for 1 year.
Uh-huh.
And my partner Sarah and I were teaching. We're like teachers and head priests at Brooklyn Zen Center,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm still teaching at the Institute of Buddhist Studies, which is located in Berkeley. But now with Zoom, I just teach Zoom courses,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and I teach Buddhist ritual, East Buddhist ritual and East Asian Buddhist traditions, and then I'm going to be teaching just an overview of the whole Buddhist tradition over 2 semesters. And sometimes I teach and then I also teach a Zen course, a course on Zen, just think history and topics, and then I've also started teaching at the Union Theological Seminary in
Uh-huh.
Manhattan, and that was in person. So I just started there in the spring.
Now, where is that?
It's like right next to Columbia.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's actually connected to Columbia. Like I got my Union Theological Seminary ID through Columbia, and so there's a whole bunch of like institutional connection there. Yeah, it's up near. It's a really famous church. I can't remember the name of the church right now, but it's a church where Martin Luther King would speak, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, so it's kind of like, and and Union Theological Seminary itself. It's kind of. I mean, I think now it's probably the most famous person there is probably Cornel West.
Oh yeah,
Um,
he's been making some news.
yeah, he's gonna do a run for the presidency.
Yeah, with a rather strange platform. Uh,
Yeah.
he's an interesting guy. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. No, he is.
yeah.
And and actually, uh, my good friend Greg, he's the Greg and Laura founded basically with Tia Brooklyn Zen Center.
Greg who?
And there's Greg Schneider. Do you know
Mm-hmm.
Greg Schneider?
Oh, Greg
So he's
Snyder founded it with Tia Strozer.
with Tia. Yeah. Well,
Uh-huh.
Greg and Laura, they were basically living in Brooklyn and started a sitting group, and that became Brooklyn Zen Center. And then Tia, I think, is kind of like she came in really as a kind of key teacher to really get it more, organized and really have a focused teacher. And then Greg and Laura become teachers, and she's kind of in the process of really stepping back from Brooklyn Zen Center. But we've been in contact with her around all this too. And then they've started a tiny monastery a couple hours north of the city. And so Greg and Laura, basically, they're living up there in Millerton, getting this monastery going. And so that's part of the reason why it made sense for Sarah and I to kind of get so involved with, teaching and leading at Brooklyn Zen Center.
Mm-hmm.
And And so, yeah, it was kind of, we were looking for the move, and they don't think they realized when we reached out to them that they could really use us so much. But now that we're here, I think we're all really grateful that it worked out this way.
Yeah. Now, where north of, because a lot of people like my wife come from around there, so she'd want to know where north of there.
Where not? So, I don't know the train very well, but it's we get on the Metro North and we go up to Wasayak, which is the last stop on the Metro North Railroad going out of Grand Central.
Mm-hmm.
And from Wasayak, it's like another 15 minutes north. And so this little town called Millerton, it's very close to the Connecticut border, like 5 miles to the border with Connecticut. And so it's actually, fairly close to the city, just like a 15-minute drive and then a 2-hour train ride. And they just bought a residence and they've turned it into a monastery. There's anywhere from I think it gets down to around 6 up to about 12 people kind of living there as doing residential training, and just kind of getting that going. It's the Brooklyn Zen Center and Ancestral, that's called Ancestral Heart Zen Monastery. There's a strong kind of impetus or focus on social justice with Dharma practice, and that's certainly an aspect of what's happening in both places.
That's interesting. What sort of social justice?
Well, there's been various programs. I mean, I think some of it has focused on race, and some of it's focused on gender, and then also some doing what can be done for people who need support. But some of that has been interfaith, and we're kind of working on interfaith connections and just with what's already happening around us with the churches, and some of the churches are really open to it. We're actually the Brooklyn Zen Center was renting a place in the city, and it was already like a stretch, and then the pandemic happened, so they had to let go of that space. And now we're just meeting in this very large room in the church. And the pastor and kind of like we actually share the room with some other renters, other groups that are using it, but we have a really nice connection with it's Father Mark is the pastor, and we have a very we've done some events together. Like we did like I think a 3-part series on abolition. And,
wow, that's really neat. And I think it's neat you're in a church and that now you're giving them some rent money or for that?
Yeah, we give them some rent, yeah.
But nothing compared to what you had to spend to have your own place, right?
Not yet. To have a dedicated space would be like 4 or 5 times as much money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it's much more affordable. I mean, there is the loss. Like we don't right now, we set up an altar every time we have an event. And we're kind of thinking about making a kind of a portable altar that we could just, almost like a butsudan, that we could just fold everything in, lock it up,
yeah,
and then just open it up and have an altar that's kind of feels more, somehow, more having a place.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I think I think that's really smart. Real estate takes it's a much bigger commitment and it's much more entangling.
It's really big, and also in Brooklyn, well, New York City is just it's just extremely expensive right now.
Yeah.
And Brooklyn especially, it's crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, we had this house in Sebastopol, and we'd owned it outright, and we sold it, and it wasn't even that. In Sebastopol is an inflated market actually, and that wasn't enough. We needed extra help to purchase this apartment. Just going down from like a big house with a big yard in an inflated market like Sebastopol.
Yeah, you had a nice place. I remember it.
yeah, and we love our apartment in Brooklyn. It's just, but it's just it's things the price, the, it's just it's crazy here. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
The prices are crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's having an impact on who can live here, and people are getting just priced out of huge parts of the city or the whole city. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's a tendency that places have.
Yeah.
I've noticed it's happening where we live, but we got our rent locked into till 2031. We've got it locked in at really low.
Wow.
So that's nice.
That's nice. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some people, we know some people, and that's how they can stay in Brooklyn. Is some places are rent controlled, and they definitely, that's the only way they could be here.
Yeah. 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 So, that's all really neat. That's you're involved with a lot. I knew you were. You had a long involvement with Soto Zen organization in America that is affiliated with the Japanese Soto Zen.
It's
go on.
Yeah, it has like I would say that the connections, it has informal connections with the Japanese Sotoshu. But it's kind of like its own thing.
Okay.
It's a separate organization.
Yeah.
And there's some interest in maybe someday trying to unify the Japanese Sotoshu organization with the SZBA, the Soto
good luck.
Association.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said affiliated with. I just thought of you as didn't you have some contact with Sokoji and
well, we had we had some meetings at Sokoji with SCBA meeting with and kind of like we tried to stay. There was a time when the two boards tried to kind of intersect a little bit, just so that we knew what each other were doing.
Yeah.
And I think especially we through Akiba Roshi and Tempiozan, his monastery project.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of interest, I think, on just keeping everybody on the same page about that whole project.
Yeah.
And but it's kind of I was sort of like the administrator for the SCBA for 6 years, and then a few years later I was on the board for about 5 years. And now I'm just a member again, and that's good I'm happy to be just a member.
I can understand. Yeah, you put your time in. That what Akiba's doing there. I mean, I've been aware of that for years. I mean, I was over there with him and Yoshi, God, maybe 13 years ago.
Maybe even more. Yeah. It goes back, 15, 16, 17 years.
Yeah. And Paul Disco was involved at one point, but he was too expensive. But I think they used a lot of what they got from him. And I sat, and we were in Japan for 10 weeks back in 2015. 2014, when we, right after we first came over here, and I sat in a little temple in Kyoto on Sunday mornings. That was where they were tight with Akiba,
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if there was a temple association, but they knew all about what he was doing. They knew him, and they knew about the Zen Center. And they had a Sunday morning Zazen guy, So
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
go
yeah,
up there and do that. And they had a gorgeous garden. I mean, it was a beautiful temple,
yeah,
and I could walk there.
yeah.
Uh, well, that's yeah. So uh, you know, I really became aware of you when you were, or in my memory anyway, goes back to when you and, what's his name, got involved with Suzuki
Oh, Tim
Roshi.
O'Connor, Tim
Yeah,
O'Connor Fraser.
yeah, right. Uh, oh, so I'd like to hear about that, but why don't you go back first to like where you were born and how you ended up at Zen Center?
Sure, sure. I was born born in Chicago
Ah,
in 1968, and my parents were at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park on the south side of the city.
uh-huh.
And I grew up there, and I I would say the part of my childhood that led to practice was I had a problem with death. Like from when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I'd lie down at night and I'd very clearly acknowledge that I was going to die, and it was really a problem for me as a child.
Wow.
And and this just stuck with me, and it would keep and like it wasn't every night, but it would death would come, and my thinking would turn to death when I was in bed at night a lot. And and I felt like nobody else is. Why isn't anybody else worried about this? Like I don't hear anybody saying. I feel like people don't want to die, but nobody's talking about it aside from like people trying not to die in movies. And and so it felt confusing. It felt like I was clear about something that was really true, but also I also was not clear about what death was. I had ideas about death.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, actually, what I was really disturbed by was my ideas of dying.
Mm.
And they were kind of, because they were ideas of isolation. Like I felt alone, and then my idea of death was very isolating also. And so I felt alone. But I think the fact that it was so denied in the cultural spheres I was in was part of my isolation and working with it. And then basically that it just kind of followed me around, and I read about Zen in high school. I read the books in our library, in our high school library, were the D.T. Suzuki and Alan Watts.
Oh.
And they're really nice books, but they did not. The books they had did not mention zazen. I don't think they even mentioned meditation. And how to
pretty much.
And so it was sort of like
almost
so
never.
I had this. Yeah, there was just beautiful stories, and something about them really appealed to me, and something about I could see somehow in my idea of what a Zen teacher was somebody who had worked out this whole thing with death. so I had that projection, maybe from things they said, and then towards the end of college, I read some more things on Zen, and then I did come across Sakita. I think Zen training, is that what it's called? And he does describe meditation, and so I started doing meditation.
Uh-huh.
And I just decided to move to San Francisco after I graduated. So that was 1991.
And where'd you graduate from?
From MIT. And,
wow. In what?
Yeah. Well, I started off in physics, but then I stopped liking physics at a certain point.
Huh.
I stopped liking physics actually when I couldn't visualize the math. So like I loved physics when I could look at the equations and I could actually see or have a tangible sense of what the equations were about. And then at a certain point, then I couldn't do it anymore, and it just became really difficult math problems, and that wasn't what was interesting to me. And so and so then I did a lot of I was doing well, they didn't have a real psychology program. They called it they had a cognitive science,
Mm-hmm.
which is, more in keeping with the science technology slant. And then I was also doing music composition. And so those are the two things I really studied there was,
Neat.
cognitive science and music composition. And, yeah, but then I didn't have a feeling that I wanted to pursue either one of those afterwards. And, I moved to San Francisco and actually found San Francisco Zen Center pretty quickly and started sitting there.
And what year was that?
That was 91.
Wow. Yeah.
And then, let's see. Then I had physically sitting was very hard for me, and so I was intimidated by Tassajara. I felt like I didn't have a sense that I could actually do that much zazen, cross-legged or seiza, and so I went to Stanford and studied Zen in a kind of academic context for 2 years.
Hmm.
So I got a master's in.
Did you study with Carl Bielefeld?
Yeah. He was like one of the main people. I was Carl Bielefeld and Bernard Faure.
Oh wow, yeah.
And there was also another professor there, Lee Yearley, who wasn't a Zen person, but he was a really neat teacher, and he was kind of he really cared deeply about teaching, and so I just took everything he taught because he had he at certain points during his teaching he would just turn to me and say something, and it was just for me. And it was about, either directly or indirectly about Zen in relation to whatever we were talking about, which could have been like Thomas Aquinas. It could have been almost anything. But he had a way of, he knew how to connect the material with the students, so he was also the other kind of main person I really appreciated studying with there.
Did you get a degree?
I got a master's degree.
In what?
I knew it was just in religious studies.
Uh-huh.
And but it was I mainly did Zen. I did some some Chinese philosophy. I did a class in Thomas Aquinas. I did a class in modern Christian theology. And I think I took abnormal psychology just for fun.
Uh-huh.
And then a lot of Zen courses or a lot of Buddhism courses.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And Carl was a great teacher, and he put a lot of thought and organization into his courses. And Bernard Faure, he was interesting. He was really interested. He would kind of teach what he was studying. So I think he would kind of pick a stack of books on a topic and teach a course because he wanted to read those books. And that was interesting. And and I appreciated both of them. And it was also it was very challenging for I was pretty early in my practice. I was really practicing on my own while doing religious studies, which sometimes was supportive for practice and often wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then another very kind of helpful person at Stanford was Gil Fronsdal, was getting his PhD at that time.
Yeah.
But he was also, he was a Zen teacher already, and so a Zen teacher and a Vipassana teacher.
Right.
And so he was a really important person for me there. And so I would usually, we'd have like a little mini dokusan in the hallways of the religious studies department. And that was very helpful. But I went a week after I graduated from Stanford. I moved to Tassajara, and I could have moved to Tassajara, a year earlier. But I did decide that I was just going to finish Stanford.
Yeah,
and,
I think that's a good idea.
And so I finished it, but then I was really ready to just really give myself to practice and so then I was very and I'd kind of been through all my doubt by the time I got to Tassajara. So it was for me it was just super supportive place to practice because I've been sitting on my own for 2 years while studying all sorts of theories and stuff, and it was just I was very happy there. Yeah. then I lived at Tassajara and Green Gulch for the next 12 years, or 12 or 13 years, and got ordained as a priest in '99, and also met my partner Sarah at Tassajara, and we got married, and we had our first daughter, Kaya. That was in 2003, and she was born at the Jamesburg house. And
really?
At the smaller house by the Zendo, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then,
wow.
Yeah, and then we went in. Then we moved into. We've been living at Tassajara. We came out to Jamesburg for the spring practice period for having the baby, just because if something goes wrong, you just don't want to be that far away from a hospital.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So we were Jamesburg was fine, and it was a very smooth birth, and we moved back into Tassajara maybe about 6 weeks later.
You had a midwife?
Yeah. We had a midwife, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Carmel Valley person. I can't remember her name right now, but she was lovely.
Go on.
Yeah, Jessamine had worked with her.
Oh, really?
Leslie James' daughter, yeah, Jessamine Meyerhoff had worked with. I can't remember the name of the midwife right now.
Was there a doctor associated with it?
No, just midwife. And, and she was like, she's like, she was used to doing stuff in Jamesburg, and she's like, if there's something happening, we'll get you to a hospital if we need to. But it was very smooth.
Yeah. My first son was born in Green Gulch, so comparable.
Yeah.
And delivered by midwives, but they were associated with the Point Reyes medical clinic or whatever it was called. And the doctors there let the midwives do it unless there was some complication. And the doctor didn't show up until after the birth.
Yeah. No, we didn't. We had no. We went. I mean, we went to a doctor's visit probably within days of the birth. Maybe after 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days. We went and just saw a doctor just to have a medical examination, but but it was but not that day. Yeah, no, it was just and then we moved back in Tassajara, and we were in Tassajara for the first year and a half of our daughter's life. She was a Tassajara baby.
Yeah, so was Kelly, my first son. I mean, we moved there when he was 3 months old, and we stayed a year and 9 months with him.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah. And I think she feels a special connection to Tassajara. She's very happy down there when she visits.
Yeah. Same with my kids. Indeed.
Yeah.
Now, listen, while you were at Tassajara, do you have any particular memories, anything happening there, or people who were important to you? Or...
Well, there's a lot.
I mean, does anything stick out?
Well, let's see. I mean, the first thing that sticks out is actually before I moved there, I just went to visit for a week in '93, and Galen Godwin's she was the Eno, and she just met me, and her smile just was very helpful. That had a big impact on me. I think that I felt really welcomed and supported to be there by her smile. And let's see, what else happened at, I mean, one of the things I really felt at Tassajara was that everyone was my teacher. And so I kind of was just, I found it to be just a really wonderful place, and just like soaking in wisdom from everybody was really, I just love that. And
wow, good attitude, man. Really.
And Yeah, and I mean, there were some. I mean, like when I first got there, there were some people who they in various ways, either towards Zen practice or towards the SFZC organization, they had become cynical, and
Yeah.
they and they were kind of, and but even they had a kind of, they had something to offer, and then and also they left, and over the next, so I started living there full time in '94, and then by about '99, like the community there, in my feeling, had become really strong, and there was just a whole bunch of us that we all just loved practice, and we loved each other, and we loved practicing together, and it was kind of, that was my kind of like '99 to '02 or so. Those are like my favorite years there. I just really just love the community, and partially I think my partner Sarah and I, we met, and she came in '98, and then we became friends over about a year and a half, and then that's when we kind of, and then at that point we kind of thoroughly fell in love with each other.
You were friends for a year and a half before you like really fell in love.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good, man. That's like establishing some sort of roots or something.
Yeah, and I think part of what we fell in love with was that our devotion to practice was really similar, and so we had this link, and so that's just always been then a part of our relationship, is that we're also like have this really deep devotion to practice that we share. And it's I mean, actually there's this, so right now we're teaching together at Brooklyn Zen Center, and we taught together at Stone Creek Zen Center in Sebastopol.
Oh, right.
For 8 or 9 years
with Jisho Carey Warner.
Yeah.
Had she retired, or what was the?
She was ready to. She didn't retire, and I think she's still not retired, and she's still actively teaching. But she did want to take a step back from being the one person who did everything.
I remember that.
And so,
right.
Yeah, and they were looking for one person, and we kind of said like, well, we're a package deal. And they accepted that. They were okay with having both of us kind of come as co-teachers, and this is something that's kind of, I have a kind of family lineage that, like, my parents, they met as grad students at Columbia under the same mentor in visual science, and then they were professors together in the same office at University of Chicago for their entire career. And then my dad's mom, she put herself through law school, I think through night school, and then became a lawyer, and her husband was a lawyer, my grandfather, and they were, they had a law firm together with his brother. And so there's a Pokorney lineage of spouses working together.
Yeah. Now, Stone Creek Zen Center was founded by Jisho, and her lineage goes back to Tozen Akiba. That's and her sort of root teacher was Katagiri, and then Tozen, and who incidentally I became very close with and saw right up to when we left. We used to see him regularly at Aroma Roasters in Santa Rosa, and he was living in the Salvation Army retirement building, and was very happy to be there and not go back to Japan. And he's become a sort of hermit there now. And an old friend of mine, Andrew Atkinson, has taken has kept track of him, has studied Japanese with him, has, just, made sure he's okay.
Yeah.
And I wonder how it makes me want to find out how Tozen's doing now, because he was becoming really a hermit in his room.
Yeah. I met him a few times. He used to teach at Stone Creek, but by the time we started teaching there, he'd really just completely retired from teaching.
Yeah.
So he wasn't doing any teaching.
Yeah.
But I did have I did meet. We met a couple times. We were trying to. Well, do you know? Did you ever meet Zoshi?
Yeah. Now remind
me. A Buddha
me.
carver.
Oh
He
yeah,
was a Buddha carver.
Yeah.
Who lived in Sebastopol.
Yeah.
So I think Zoshi was. We were trying to figure out how to help Zoshi. How to figure out what Zoshi should do.
Yeah.
Because he had some health issues, and then anyway, I think it was. I think eventually, Zoshi ended up moving back to Japan. And I studied Buddha carving with Zoshi actually in Sebastopol for 3 or 4 years, right up to the pandemic. And
is that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I didn't know Zoshi, but I met him. I think Hideko Pechi kept track of him or had some.
Oh, yeah?
So did you ever run into Hideko?
I did. She had connection to Stone Creek, and then also when we were leaving, I was doing the bookkeeping for Stone Creek, and she volunteered to take over the bookkeeping. So we spent a lot of time together. I transmitted the bookkeeping to her.
I had no idea. Well, that's really great to hear.
Yeah. It was very sweet.
Wow. Huh. Yeah, I'll tell her. She'll probably want to listen to this podcast. Yeah, that's neat. So, well, one thing I was wondering, you come from the Shunryu Suzuki lineage, and Jisho comes from the Tozen Akiba lineage, and
Akiyama.
I mean Akiyama. Pardon me. And did that ever matter?
It didn't. I think sometimes we just had we would have little conversations, but I think it didn't feel like a big thing. It didn't feel like a big lineal thing. We would do precepts ceremonies together, and we tended to just kind of make them kind of corporate. Like we would give 2 lineage documents actually.
Oh, all right.
And so because we didn't necessarily have a feeling in the Jukai ceremony that you were kind of just working with one teacher, but that all 3 of us, Sarah, Jisho, and I, were all kind of giving the precepts together. And so, so we would do both lineages, and I think it never. I think in some ways, individuals are, as individuals, all 3 of us were so distinct. That those distinctions were kind of probably at least as substantial as any kind of lineal difference. And also Jisho had, I think in some ways was, I'm not sure how she, whether she would, and I mean, I know she had, deep regard for Tozen and was in that lineage, and also had, this kind of her roots were with Katagiri Roshi. And so she already had a kind of, was working with multiple people. And she also went to the Nisoto in Japan for, I think, 6 months. And
where
I think with Aoyama Roshi. Not positive actually.
Where?
I don't know where.
That whole thing is all after my time. That's so interesting. I mean, when I went to Japan, it was really just some. Well, there was the two temples in Obama with the two Harada Roshis there, and they were the Harada Yasutani line, and then there's the one that I practiced. I lived next door to it, and with Elin was Harada Shodo. And yeah, it was funny. There were all these, and there was like another Harada who taught Westerners. And that was Rinsai, but there wasn't much happening Soto wise. But there's been more development in that area, and I don't know about. I just hear about it. What do you know about that?
I don't know much about. Yeah, no, that I've just been to Japan for one 2-week trip about over 20 years ago.
Yeah,
where we went and stayed at Rinso Inn for about a week, and then we went to Eiheiji for 2 nights for the Dogen's 750th memorial service.
Oh, that's with the group, right?
Yeah, that was with a group. That was with Reb and a bunch of students of Reb, and a few other people came, and then we went back to Rinso Inn. And
who was your teacher at Zen Center?
Oh, Reb.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I did priest ordained with Reb in 99, and then did Dharma transmission 2018.
Oh, all right. Well, that's good to know. Well, how'd you like Rinso Inn, staying there?
Oh, it was we loved it. It was beautiful. It was really neat, and Huitsu Roshi and was very gracious host, and then his son Shingo-san was really neat to just meet him and get to know him. And he was, I think his wife was pregnant at the same time that Sarah was pregnant, and so that was we had a kind of little connection there, and we would sit in the Buddha hall, but then we were sleeping. The men were sleeping in the Zendo. The whole group would sit together in the Buddha hall and do services, and it was lovely. And I would love to go back to Japan. I'd love to. I think Brooklyn Zen Center. I think there's a kind of I think actually it would be a good thing for Brooklyn Zen Center to offer to the Sangha here some kind of trip to Japan, to Rinso Inn and Eiheiji and maybe some other places too. We'd have to kind of figure out. Yeah, but I think that's sort of probably in the next year or 2 or 3.
Go to Koya-san. Go to Koya-san.
Yes, I would love to.
Yeah, the Shingon Center. That's great.
Yeah.
And you can stay in those temples. There's temples that are really set up for guests. And Katrinka and I stayed in one of them for a few nights, and we sat zazen with them in the morning and ate with them. And it's a very compact place. I'd say 2 nights. It is enough for it. And what a trip up the mountain to it. And it's just so amazing. I loved it.
And I'm a big, I love Shingon Buddhism too. I would love to have more experience of it. Yeah.
All right. So where are we now? Oh yeah, I was picking your brain about Tassajara. Well, I was glad to hear what you said. I sort of wanted to know the flavor of it. Also somebody in one of these podcasts, I remember these things people say that I sometimes, and I can't remember who said it, but, somebody was talking about how the culture at Zen Center has changed, and keeps evolving. And it's like that you can't really I mean, they're like really different. When I arrived in '66. I saw a lot of evolution of the culture through the years, but I never thought of it that way. And I thought that was really true. It was like the culture changed a lot, the practice changed, the rules changed. I mean, there was a lot in common, but it just keeps evolving. And sometimes I get people getting hold of me about stuff they're upset with Zen Center, and I say, well, just wait. It'll evolve.
Well, I think Tassajara, a lot of the long-term people settled at City Center in Green Gulch.
Yeah.
And the only kind of long-term people in the 80s and 90s at Tassajara was Leslie and Keith.
Right, and they're still there. Well, I mean, they're at Jamesburg.
But nobody else was staying for more than 5 years at a time.
Right. And that's pretty long. That's long for Tassajara.
Yeah, but the whole I feel like Tassajara would have a lot of cultural shifting because literally it was a whole completely different group of people every 5 years.
Yeah.
And
I always loved it. I always loved it. I love back there.
Yeah, I love the dynamism of that, and also and less experienced people would be running the place. You'd stay there for a couple of years, you're on senior staff, and 4 years, 5 years, you're running the place.
Uh-huh.
and Leslie's and when I really came up with Leslie as being the Tonto and then the kind of senior teacher and just felt really. I feel like she's really good at like empowering and supporting people to grow in leadership.
Yeah, I love her. I think she's great.
Yeah.
She had to tolerate me a lot. Yeah. But we have pretty warm feelings about each other now. She survived it. Well, so you were there, and how long were you in the city?
I never actually. Well, I lived in San Francisco in '91, but it just in an apartment.
Okay.
Okay. And I would go to City Center. That's why that was like my first practice place. But I've never actually lived at City Center. I stayed there for just like vacations and sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, how did you get involved? You and Timothy O'Connor Fraser had a really pivotal role in putting Suzuki Roshi lectures on the Zen Center website. I mean, were you the first to do that?
I think we were the first to. I think that was the first time that the teachings were being put on the website and made publicly available. I was on the board, I think, at the time, and I think they just thought, somebody had the idea of, let's just ask Charlie to do this.
Uh-huh.
I was living in Sebastopol, so I wasn't a resident, and I think probably the residents everybody had too much to do already, and so I think that's part of the reason I was asked.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a real I really treasured the chance to do that. And so what they wanted me to do was to kind of like the way it was framed. I think this might have been from like Tim O'Connor Fraser and maybe the Robert Thomas or somebody, the president at the time, had the idea to kind of unroll it as a blog. Like I think I'd post one or two talks of the transcribed talks, which I think there was about 400, one or two per week. And so I did that, and so I'd post a talk on this blog that was part of San Francisco Zen Center kind of beautifully designed. And then there was also a Suzuki Roshi Facebook page, and so I'd go over to the Facebook page and I'd draw a quote from that talk and a link to the and so we'd put up the transcription, and then when there was a recording, we'd put up a recording, and then the Facebook post with the quote, and and kind of like to find, and so I just it took about 4 years. And I got to read all the talks.
Wow!
Over those 4 years, and I loved that this was a kind of a job, or this was like a responsibility that I accepted, and I was like, so I have to read a Suzuki Roshi talk today, and try to, what I would do is I'd read the talk, and then I'd draw out quotes as I went along, and so I have like somewhere I have all the files with like, sometimes it'd be like 20 quotes from a talk that were all great, and I would just pick one of them.
Yeah.
And it was really, I love spending that time with Suzuki Roshi's teachings. And I also, when I give talks now, if I have a topic, I'll sometimes go to the kind of like the one file version of his talks and just, check out everything he said about a word,
Yeah.
And I love that, and kind of just a way to kind of,
right.
Like I recently did that with ritual.
Right.
I was giving a talk to the priest group at San Francisco Zen Center about Suzuki Roshi's teachings on ritual, and so I just went and found everything on ritual, and or another time I did Buddha nature. That was really fun.
Oh, neat. Hey, if you've got, I've done that some, and other people have done that some. I think the one I did was first was the term most important, and he used about back then. The archive has kept growing. And incidentally, you can get an updated all Suzuki Roshi lectures file from us. I get a new one updated about twice a year because we keep working on it, and David Shundo. David Hayes has put a lot of work into it, and so now the one that we put in that make it downloadable for all the lectures that's the verbatim or closest to verbatim. But we've done we've tried to get light edits of all of them. I think there's about 13 we're looking at right now, but that's Peter Ford and Wendy Piercing are doing that, and I just sort of look at it. Well, all right. One thing is you and Timothy, but are Tim, right?
Tim, yeah.
Yeah. You and Tim did a really important thing. You made it Creative Commons copyright.
Yeah.
And
that was Tim.
Yeah. So how did that work out? I mean, how did that come about?
I wasn't part of that. I wasn't part of that decision. I think somebody at some point said, like, well, do you think we should make this publicly available? And I was like, yes. Actually, maybe that was part of the reason why I got asked to do it.
Yeah.
I think I said to Dana, I think Dana Veldin had some role at that time, like secretary, and maybe as a board member, maybe that was part of the story. I think I said, like, we've got these 400 transcripts. Why don't we just put them why don't we just make them available? Because the Dharma.
Yeah.
Just make it available. And I think she said, oh, well, I'll ask. And then I think she asked, and she got an okay. And then she said, well, could you help? Could you do something? Could you be part of this? And so I was like, yeah. And because my feeling is been, whatever, just that to share the dharma, share, that it's not for, I don't like it, like seeing it as something to hold or try to make into a profit.
That's absolutely, and that's always been my my feeling. Actually, there was a good deal of the struggle around being, because we've been making everything public since I started Cuke.com in December of '98, and started putting lectures on in '99, and it caused great concern at Zen Center. So we made a deal that we could put on one at a time. But, the way I did it, nobody pays attention, is I'd put on a new one and feature it one at a time. But the ones that had been on were on there. Little by little, it grew to be the whole thing. But there was a whole evolution of being able to make it public, which started off with sharing floppy disks of his transcripts that I put together with priests and Steve Stuckey and Ed Brown and stuff like that, and people were very concerned about that. I mean, that's what it goes back to, and then you all made it really broke the ice with Zen Center on that. By doing that, but making it Creative Commons, because if there were later times that somebody in authority would tell me they were concerned about what we were doing, and I would say, well, it's all copyrighted under Creative Commons, and that means that it can be shared freely. Suzuki Roshi's teaching can be shared freely with the public in a non-commercial way. And I said, then Zen Center has all the consumer products. And that would be what? I said, Zen Mind Beginner's Mind is a consumer product.
Well, I think the books and the work that went into that book and the Not Always So and the other book, the other Suzuki Roshi books, I think they become it's a different production, and I think they have their own different. They still have their value.
Oh well, they have great value. That's what people have read. I mean, it's just well, I don't know. We've had actually zillions of people go on ShinryuSuzuki.com. God, I don't know. I can't remember. Hundreds every day. I can't remember. Cuke.com is more like 2,000 a day.
Wow.
But Zen Mind Beginner's Mind, nothing more important than that. It's just a different. It's a different avenue, and not always so. That's wonderful. And the work that Michael Winger did with Mel, branching streams flow in the darkness. And Mel's Counterpoint has a book of Mel's work on Suzuki Roshi lectures, plus a autobiographical, but it's sort of 2 parts that will be coming out at some point. I mean, it's sort of finished. So the books are extremely important, but it's good to have the raw material be public. Now, at first, that was totally not wanted. If you go back to when Suzuki Roshi was alive, he didn't want anybody seeing or hearing his lectures the way they were given. He wanted them edited into good English. You know?
Yeah.
But at a certain point, that wasn't right anymore.
Yeah.
You know, things had evolved.
There's so much. Well, there's so much value for us, I think, in the verbatim.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, actually, another thing also to just that the importance of Zen mind, beginner's mind, also just I would hear from people like every year at Tassajara that one of the main things that had brought them to San Francisco Zen Center was just a photo on the back.
That's right. That's right.
Like that image of his face, like there's something in that image that just it communicates. There's a lot of Dharma in that face that just pulls people in.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's been extremely important. Almost as important as Ed Brown's cookbooks. Dick Baker told me, like when he first became avid, like not long after that, he was on a plane and the person he was sitting next to found out that he was the abbot of Zen Center, and they said to him, "Really, you are? Do you know Ed Brown?"
Yes. Yeah.
Well, anyway, thanks for all that. The thing about Zen Center with the lectures is what you all did was great. But with a lot of things with Zen Center, there's not continuity.
Yeah.
So Zen Center does things in spurts. Now, that has been changed, at least for now, by Engaged Wisdom, which was founded by Charlie Wilson and David Shundo. Hay has been working with it. And they've got all the lectures. They, have state-of-the-art audio engineering and all that.
Yeah, I heard about Charlie Wilson, who founded Engaged Wisdom in 2013, right before I came to Asia, and we made a deal. He redigitized the whole Shunryu Suzuki audio archive in the highest way possible, and Cuke Archives paid for it.
They have one version of the transcript. I think they use the most. They use the verbatim or closest to verbatim. We put everything up. We put every edited version we can find and light edits and also different audio versions. We link to theirs, but we have our own up too. And I've been doing editing of the audio, which is. I'd like to drop everything and just concentrate on that. And that's not taking out meaning. That's taking out coughs and spaces.
Yeah. And
when he starts a sentence and then stops and starts somewhere, it starts it in a different way.
Yeah.
But it would Zen Center through the years it would sort of, if you don't have somebody in charge of something, it sort of deteriorates, or I don't know. And even recently, they've changed the links to their lectures so much. We've given up linking to Zen Center. We just link to Engaged Wisdom, and that's all they're putting up is the Engaged Wisdom versions anyway.
Yeah, and their website it's changed a couple of times, and I think they've also had different architects, involved with their website too.
Yeah, it's gone through various stages. There'll be really hopeful periods, but yours was the best until Charlie and Shundo got involved.
Oh, yeah.
That was the halcyon days of.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting to me that they. Anyway, yeah.
Well,
that you change things and then you change all the links, and it is kind of a problem.
Yeah, yeah. You know, if we change a link, we put a forward from the old link, so it still works.
Yeah.
In maybe not in every case, but in general, we do that.
Yeah.
Well, and I can remember visiting you while you were doing that. I remember taking you, hard drive of everything we had. I wonder how much I gave you. Did I give you a hard drive with like everything, all the interviews and?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's around. I mean, it was like 10 plus years ago. But
you gave me
it
was over 10. Over 10.
Yeah.
It was more like.
And
and
all the photos too. I put up the photos with the talks.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that blog still exists, but when I did the blog rollout, I put up all the talks and I put up photos with the talks, and and if I could, I'd match a photo to the to the topic or something, some theme.
Yeah.
And that was also, and that was it was great to spend time with those photos.
Yeah.
And and then there was also the film clips.
Yeah.
And, and those. I think we did not figure out how to put those up at that time, or maybe there was hesitancy about copyright issues with.
I never paid attention to that.
Yeah.
Listen. I talked to Dick Moore, who was president of KQED when the Zen Center film. When the Tassajara Zen Mountain Center film was made by KQED, and Dick Moore lived in Mirror Beach, and, we were friends. And, I went and visited. I would visit him periodically at the Redwood Retirement Place where Betty Warren was, and Lolly Rossett and some other old Zennies. Betty Warren, Suzuki's, started sitting with Suzuki like the first week. So he came to America.
Yeah, wow.
And I asked Dick Moore about that because I would, I was putting the video online, and he said, David, don't ever ask. He said they'll give it to a lawyer, and lawyers just say no. And he said, don't ask. No, nobody knows who owns that film. Nobody knows. Does the filmmaker own it? Is it KQED own? No. So we've got all the video. There's 6 different ones too by now, 5 or 6. We've got video of Suzuki in the 1930s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Go look. Just go to the video page on ShunRyuSuzuki.com.
Okay.
Yeah, Miss Ransom, his English teacher's old film, which she gave to Graham Petchy.
Huh.
And then he dropped it off at Green Gulch. I said, Graham, what the, they lose things, But anyway, it ended up in the safe in the office in Zen Center. And I got it all digitized back in 2008 or something. Wow. Yeah. So you were doing all that, and you were with Zen Center, and somehow you ended up on the East Coast. Is there anything in there that we're missing?
That's a good overview. Yeah, I mean, like I think we thought about moving back to San Francisco Zen Center, and Sarah has family out here, and and so we kind of decided to come to the East Coast, and we're kind of Brooklyn Zen Center, as I mentioned earlier, working on social justice, looking at race, looking at gender, patriarchy, misogyny, and so on, and that's kind of where we have a lot of that's for us were a very alive topics for Dharma practice, and so we just felt a lot of resonance, and and our son is he's adopted. He was born in Petaluma, but both his parents were European and Samoan descended, and so he's not white, and so we kind of, part of the impetus of coming to a city was just, and specifically Brooklyn, was just to come to a place that was less white and less white dominant culture, and we really appreciate that about Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And I think and so far actually he hates it.
Oh, how old is he?
But I think he's 11. But I think I think by the time he gets to high school, I think he'll be really glad we're here. But I mean, he doesn't. Hate is a strong word, but he really likes. I think he misses. We had a big backyard with trees, and he really misses that. And I think he's almost. I think his new friends now are. I think he's almost as close to his new friends as he was to his old friends. So I think that's actually starting to balance out.
Yeah, that's hard on kids.
Yeah, but we've been here a year.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. But how did you get from Sebastopol to there? I mean, like, was there a connection with the Brooklyn Zen Center or TIA? Or did you decide to go to the East Coast and then got that connection, or what?
No, we kind of we started. Well, I think we decided that we were going to leave Sebastopol, and we didn't know where we were going to go. But possibilities are San Francisco, East Bay, Boston, New York, or Washington D.C. I think those are the places we were thinking of, and then the first people we just reached out to were Greg and Laura, and Sarah and I had lived with Laura at Tassajara 20 years ago. So we knew Laura from back then, and they had kept up a connection over the years. Mm-hmm. And so then the four of us just started talking, and so we kind of, over maybe a year and a half, actually, we'd have a conversation every month or two, and it became it kind of just started off as an idea, and it became a kind of a plan. And so so it was and so actually the year before we moved, actually we had started giving talks at Brooklyn Zen Center and getting involved with some of the programs online. And so we were kind of feeling our way. We were kind of through the internet and occasionally through an in-person talk, finding our connections with the Sangha. So, and then basically, arrived and immediately started functioning as priests and teachers for the community. Yeah. And we love the Sangha here, and it's a really beautiful, wonderful community, and we're really happy to be practicing Zen in Brooklyn, and
one thing I always like to ask people is, what do you think about global warming? Or climate change, we could call it.
Yeah, I think what do I think? I think we I think it's really important to kind of start opening our eyes and trying to zero in on what are effective responses now, where are the changes that could help actually going to take place, and how do we get those to happen? I think actually that the most significant things that need to happen aren't necessarily kind of using reusable bags. I mean, I think that can help, but I think really I think there has to be kind of major policy shifts, and corporations need to be held accountable to the destruction of the world.
Yes,
because that's what's driving it more than anything, and then the consumerism that's driving the corporations, and I feel like for me the practice the practice part is that I think in the midst of suffering, to offer people a way to be meaningfully connected to each other and to the earth, like an actual living connection and relationality, that's the source of what will that's the source of positive activism in the world, and that it's actually coming from love. And if it's coming, and then and I feel like that's sustainable activism. And so I think the more of that there is, the better chance we have. But I think it is it's a scary time, and I think it's really, I don't know if we can really understand the impacts that's having on the kind of the consciousness of the younger generations right now. I think they're kind of growing up in a different world than I grew up in.
Yeah.
And it's I think it really is different,
Yeah. Yeah. Sure different from what I grew up in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I think opening our eyes. I think denial isn't going to help us. And just really and starting to face these things, and dedicating real resources to like, well, what can help? How can it help? How can we what are the biggest impacts, and how do we address them? And are we willing to do that? And take those steps, and before like there's just a level of destruction, that's irreversible, or there probably already is irreversible destruction, but as little as possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think like, I from in my mind, like kind of like the mindsets of kind of like patriarchal white supremacy culture is part of this pattern of destruction, and in United States culture, corporate culture, and being not being driven for just being driven by power and profit, and not human connection. And
that's right. Yeah. I certainly sympathize with your thoughts there. Yeah. Well, good luck to us on that front. Well, this was good. I really appreciate it. I got to know you better. I got to know more about you. And a lot more about you. Where does Sarah come from?
Sarah, she grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. And then she went to Carleton for college, and then moved out to San Francisco. And
well, do you have any? I think we're wrapping it up here. Do you have any final thoughts, Charlie?
Final thoughts? Well, my final, one Suzuki Roshi teaching that I think about, and I've kind of brought up a few times in the last year, is I can't remember the exact quote, but basically it's like the way we learn Zen is by doing it. Like the way we understand and find the meaning of the practice is by doing the practice.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a really simple idea, but really deep, and kind of like, like don't try to use your thinking really too much. Just and you have to sit, you have to bow, you have to chant. Like we there's no substitute.
Yeah.
And I find it really deep and encouraging, and I'm really true. I guess I found to think this has been my life in Zen practice.
Yeah. The I learned the Jesuit motto from Jerry Brown. His study, and I've never forgotten it. I think about it a lot. And it's do what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's sort of like, don't think about it, do it. But you look at it in different ways. When, like, there's some things I learned. Some of the first things I learned, I've never forgotten, and they're still with me. Like Wang Po, in that wonderful Blowfield translation, which was done long ago in the 60s, saying, well, just stand when you're standing, sit when you're sitting, lie down when you're lying down. And he said, that's all you have to do. It should take about 10 years. Really?
That sounds pretty quick.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Charlie. Give my love to Sarah. And,
Yes.
Yeah, if you come this way, drop by.
Okay, sure. Yes. And thank you very much.
Yeah.
I wish you well.
Yeah, you too. Yeah. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So thanks a lot, Charlie. Charlie, Korin Pokorney. Appreciate it. I got a little carried away there talking with Charlie about Shinya Suzuki archiving stuff, but it's that's natural because that's what I do, and I've always appreciated all the effort and energy he's put into that, into the Buddhist Dharma and teaching, and wow, he's really done his homework. I'm just a dilettante compared to him and so many people out there today. I'm more like a reporter who sort of dabbled in Buddhism and now brings to you the stories and profiles and memories of a whole range of people who've been involved with the Shinya Suzuki lineage and beyond. So thanks a lot, Charlie. Take care. And hi to Sarah. And this has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sonora with Doggett Bandita, guest Doggett Boombita, and dear lovely Katrinka, and we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.